Welcome to Turn the Page, the official podcast of the Syosset Public Library.
Hi, this is Evelyn.
And this is Lisa.
And we are here with Kitty Zeldis, who wrote a book called Not Our Kind. Hi, Kitty. Thank you so much for coming.
Hi. So happy to be here.
We're so happy to have you here. So I read the book.
So did I.
I really enjoyed it.
So did I.
It's a great story, great Jewish story.
Yes,
which
it
is
is.
what I liked about it a lot.
Based in New York City, of course.
Right. We like New York City, and we love historical fiction.
Well, good.
So it's got all the components of the books that we all love.
Yes.
So we're just curious to know, is this book based on actually any real things that happened to you in your life or that you were told stories about?
Well, novels are always a mixture, at least for me, of things that actually happened and things that I invent. But they have to come from some place, some actual form of experience or feeling. Otherwise, I have no basis to write. And so, yes, there definitely were things in this novel that tapped into my personal experiences.
Did you know anybody that had to change their last name?
I've heard of people doing that, although, this book is set in the 40s, and I did that intentionally because I thought the kinds of issues that I was raising were even more sharply delineated in the 1940s. But I knew people who voluntarily changed their names,
My grandfather did.
Yeah, so
My
yeah,
husband's family did too.
See,
Yeah.
so people who just thought it'd
Yeah.
be easier to go through go through life with the name Gilmore rather than Goldberg, and they just did that. But they weren't forced to or coerced to in any way.
It was interesting how when I read Moss, because I actually had a teacher at Moss, and I started wondering
What her real name was.
if that was her real, last name.
Okay, so tell us about what made you write about this. I know you went to Vassar.
I did. I went to Vassar in the 1970s, and I loved Vassar. It was a remarkable intellectual experience, and it wasn't sort of a natural choice for me. I'm probably one of the few young girls whose father said, "I'm really disappointed in you," when I told him I was going there. My father was a Zionist and kind of a socialist, and he just thought it was this elitist place, and that's not where I should be. But I did go, but it was my first encounter with wasps and en masse. The Christians I knew growing up in Brooklyn were Irish Catholics or Italian Catholics, and they were kind of on a level with us.
Similar, yes, absolutely.
And many of them went to the local parochial school. The Jewish kids went to the public school, but we kind of knew each other from the neighborhood. Wasps were like a different thing, a breed apart, and they intimidated me, they fascinated me, I envied them, I disdained them, I was afraid of them, but I was curious about them. And what I realized from being there very quickly was that Vassar was a place, although as I said, I did find it welcoming, and there were Jewish students and Jewish faculty members, but it was a place built on excluding people like me. That Vassar was a place that was founded on excluding people like me, and that I was, in fact, the not our kind of this book's title. Once I knew that, it was not something I could not know anymore. And it really has shaped my understanding of what it is to be a Jew in a non-Jewish world, in a largely, obviously, we are a minority. So in a world that we have to kind of fit into. And I think there are particular issues, for me, like for Eleanor, if you are very religious, I think your community is something that protects you and buffers you and shelters you. And there are a lot of questions that are just naturally answered, like how you're going to raise your children, who you're going to marry, how you're going to practice your faith. Like all of those things are answered for you by that life. That's what that life does. It defines those things. But if you are a more assimilated Jew and a less observant one, as I was, then those questions are kind of thrown back at you, and you have to figure all that out. So, I think that's been a question that's interested me my entire adult life. Like, what does it mean to be a Jew in this non-Jewish world, and how does that get expressed and lived out? And I don't know why at this moment I chose to write this novel. I can't really say. It started a number of years ago, and I had to put it aside for various reasons, so I'm not even sure I remember. But once I I got that idea, I really seized upon it. It was one of great interest to me.
Okay. You know what? Why don't we backtrack a little, and why don't you tell our listeners what the book's about?
Well, the book is about two women, Eleanor Moskowitz and Patricia Bellamy. They both live on the Upper East Side, but it's a very different Upper East Side. Eleanor Moskowitz lives on 2nd Avenue, which was east of the L, and you did not want to be east of the L in those years. It was an elevated track, and it totally dominated the landscape. It was big, and it cast shadows. And Patricia lives on Park Avenue. And these two women never should have met, but they do, and their lives intersected ways neither of them could have expected. And it's set in that that post-war period.
Right.
And, if I had to give you a 25-word elevator pitch, I'd say it's gentleman's agreement, but with women at the center. Same kinds of issues, same kinds of milieu.
Mm-hmm. And they can't believe that someone would live on 2nd Avenue. They keep saying they can't believe.
There's only stores on 2nd
Avenue.
Avenue.
Yes, I can't believe people.
I did live on 2nd Avenue
Oh, you
for
did?
a number of years with my husband.
Okay.
On 2nd Avenue and 84th Street. So,
But has it changed since
a lot.
1947?
Well, not only since 1947, since the 1980s when I
Right.
lived there, it's quite different. It still felt more ethnic and more like a neighborhood. It was Yorkville.
Oh,
So
okay.
there were like German shops and Hungarian, and that's kind of practically all gone now. It's just been sort of made more
What's
generic.
there now?
Well, it's just like more generic, chains, the Gap, Starbucks,
Oh, okay.
New York State offices,
Like all
banks,
over New York
like
City.
all over Manhattan.
Right.
Yeah.
You can't walk a block without
Right.
a Starbucks or a nail salon.
That's
how
right.
I
Oh, many nail salons.
Yeah, things have definitely changed.
Yeah, it's amazing. Every 40 years, it really changes.
So what kind of research did you have to do for Not Our Kind?
Well, I had already been, in effect, doing it in my love for films of that period and had seen a lot of, so I kind of knew what things looked like. But I did add to that. I got a lot of photographic books that I ordered, online. Amazon is the writer's best friend, that and Google. So
Not the library?
the New York Public Library, actually. And I did a lot of research that I didn't end up using in this book because originally there was a rape in it and a trial, things that I eliminated.
Yeah.
But I did a lot of research actually at the New York Public Library to see how rapes were covered in the newspapers. Like how were these cases and trials reported on? I wanted to know that. I thought that would be really interesting.
Did you have to do research on hats?
That just came naturally to me.
I have a
I
question
love
on that too.
I love hats. But yes, I did do research, and I found this wonderful first-person account. Apparently, there was a big hat-making industry in Danbury, Connecticut, which I did not know about, and a first-person account of a hat maker. And I used some of the details, like Irina gets a needle stuck in her arm, and I read
It's
that.
still there, though.
It's still there, right? And she
You could live like that?
Yes,
it doesn't hurt
apparently
you at
can.
all?
And this person who was interviewed, they did have it taken out years later.
Okay.
But in her case, I decided to have her leave it in. But so this person lived with it for many, many years, and it didn't bother them. They just had this needle embedded in their skin. It's weird, right? Like a
Yes.
chip.
Yeah,
like
I
or
would find
something.
that quite uncomfortable.
I would. The idea of it sort of creepy,
I wouldn't
right?
even know the materials of the hats and everything.
Well, I knew some of it just from my interest, but then I was able to research that, hat making as a. Several people have asked me, was there a milliner in my past? And I say, I only wish there had been.
Well, were the hats symbolic of the Jewish religion?
Well,
Did
that's
you feel?
a good question.
Yeah.
I didn't think of that, but you're right. They do suggest that, don't they? And this is funny because I did a JCC event recently, and I wore a hat. I wore a hat here today.
Oh, okay.
But I took it off when I came in. But that day, I kept the hat on throughout the event, and several people asked me if I was Orthodox. And I said no, but I feel like in honor of this book, I like to wear a hat. I mean, I like wearing hats anyway, and that's why I wanted to write about them. But that I should be wearing hats when I go to speak about this book. And then one person did ask me if I'd had cancer. So that was the other association people had, and neither one was true. I am neither Orthodox nor a cancer
Thank
survivor.
God.
I just
Okay.
like hats and wear them at many opportunities.
Very nice. I mean, they're big now with all those fascinators in England. We see all the royals and all the weddings and everything they go to.
Yes.
Everybody
And
wears hats.
those are purely decorative, right?
Well, we don't wear any of that
Yeah,
here,
yeah,
so.
Well, I did try on a hat with a veil, which is the most enchanting thing, but I cannot tell you how irritating it is to wear. It's like somebody's doing this to you all day
yeah, I
long.
wouldn't
They're like
enjoy
in
that
your
either.
face. I didn't buy it. I just thought, like, I love the idea of this, but I am not wearing. I'm just like not intentionally making an obstruction in my day.
But I feel like even when you look at photos from that time period, most men were always wearing hats. Like
Yes,
when they
that's
were-
true.
Yeah,
That's
it was
right.
like that was their thing. They just always. you
That's
know.
right.
Yeah, men wore hats.
Then
so-
Men wore-
everybody wore hats
Yeah,
and
yeah,
gloves.
And
But
gloves, yes.
It was Kennedy in the '60s that kind of did away. I mean, he
Now we're
appeared in
lucky if
public.
people are dressed.
Right, with right. They
yes.
go out in their gatkes.
So one question I wanted to know is, how did your own experiences shape the characters you created, and why did you choose to set the novel in post-World War II New York?
In
Well,
1947.
Okay, I will. I didn't want to set it during the war. I just thought there was something too obvious about setting it during the war because of the anti-Semitism that we learned about, in Europe. And after the war, like several people had said to me, "Oh, I thought all that was resolved by the war," and it wasn't. Those issues still existed. My working title for the book was restricted, and that was a word that was used very openly and with pride by real estate agents and developers and people that had hotels and inns. This is something I researched, like brochures that said, "Come to our lovely restricted inn," or "Move to our lovely restricted neighborhood." And that was what it clearly meant was, you don't like those people? Don't worry, they're not going to be here. You don't have to deal with them. So that was why I chose that period. I thought that would really, bring the issues into sharper focus. And the first part of your question was, the two characters. And
How did you shape the characters you created? How did your own experiences shape the characters
well,
you
they
created?
kind of come to me like I'm hearing voices. Eleanor was the more obviously, the one with whom I had the greater affinity in terms of background and experience. But Patricia, I felt like was a woman I had, been watching since I was a girl at Vassar, like those waspy girls. How did they get to be so confident and so easy in the world? I was fascinated by them, and she was one of those girls.
Do you think her struggle with the divorce was more how she would be perceived, or do you think she was still in love with Wynne?
I think she felt regret at where that love had taken her and what it had become. But yes, that was a time that there was much greater stigma attached to being divorced. And, she had a place for herself in the world as a married woman, and she was going to have to surrender that if she divorced him.
I think she was afraid of not being invited to places.
Yes.
and-
She also was afraid of how it would affect her daughter, how
Yes,
Margot would.
yes.
Margot, right?
Right,
Martha,
yes,
Uh-huh.
and that is always true in a divorce, even now.
Yes.
But the stigma has, been largely erased.
Yes, very much so. When more than 50% of all marriages end in divorce.
Right.
Yeah.
It's a little different now, absolutely. Now, what about Tom? He was such a suave character.
Yes.
Is he based on anyone you know?
No one in particular, just bits and pieces. We're I shouldn't say that. Some writers do base characters directly on people they know, but I have never done that. I'm more like a blue jay. They pick things out as they like them. They find shiny things and bring them back to their nests. So that's what I feel like I'm doing. I'm finding a little detail here and something there and something else I like, and I'm bringing it all together and creating this character out of it.
I noticed that sometimes I thought he was younger than Patricia, and other times I didn't even realize it until later that he was older.
He is older, but
Yes.
he has a boyish kind of,
Yes.
Yeah,
also
I think that-
irresponsible quality.
Right, he doesn't even have to work.
He
so.
doesn't. Yeah, he just
Right.
kind of floats around. I'm just gonna hang out up here.
Right.
and-
So there was plenty of money on both sides,
Right.
I guess, on
Right,
Wynn's side and on Eleanor's side.
right.
But
No,
the-
Patricia's side.
Patricia, I'm sorry,
But
not Eleanor.
The one thing I do admire is that he doesn't seem to care what other people think of him. Like they're like, well, what would they think about you hanging out with this guy? Oh, well, I don't care what anyone thinks of me. And I really thought, for that time period, that was big.
Well, that's true. He's, he sort of represents that.
Very opposite
like-
his sister
yes,
with that
right.
whole.
Right. But he's also a man, and men, had greater freedom and still have greater freedom.
That's true.
Do you think they will actually get married, Eleanor and Tom?
I have been asked that many times, and I wanted them to be married. I wanted them
Okay.
to be together, but I felt to write that would, in a sense, be to undercut everything else I'd written. I don't know if those problems can be resolved. I didn't want to write a book that says, yes, love conquers all. I don't know that it does.
Right.
I do think that people have to be, not have to be, but let's just say they experience problems when they are from disparate backgrounds and they can't really incorporate one another's experiences into their own, and that could create trouble for them.
Right. But Patricia seemed to be more concerned with what Wynn was going to feel about that.
Yes,
Right.
she
And
was
then
good.
once she was going to divorce Wynn, you would think that maybe it would have been okay.
Well, I think
Could have
she-
been. We don't know because
Right,
we don't
right,
really know
right.
for
But
sure what happens.
It's funny how Patricia does this. She's like, well, of course Eleanor will say yes. You know, she was
right.
like,
Well, she thought she was, a
Yeah,
gold
'cause
digger.
that's
and-
what her
That
husband
that's-
kept telling
right.
her.
That's what she was
Right.
after from the beginning.
Yeah,
And in fact, that is what Eleanor wants at the beginning, but for different reasons.
Right.
You know, she really does love this man and
Yes.
wants, and that's the culmination. You know, that's what she's been brought up to expect and to plan for. But in the course of the novel, I like to think that she's changed and she's not so sure that that's what she wants.
She's pretty sure it's not what she wants.
Yeah.
I think she really loved the idea of living on her own.
Mhm.
Like once she got that taste of living on her own, she's like, well, why do I want to go and deal with that again?
Yeah, when she moved into that apartment, all I could think of is like the honeymooners, like an apartment like the honeymooners
Right.
were in, like
There's-
that kind of apartment.
Right.
It's a
that-
walk up.
A walk
Yeah.
up on
With
on
just
the-
like one room.
which
and-
is kind of the apartment I had with my husband. It was more than
Okay.
one room, but it was a railroad flat on
Right.
2nd Avenue
yeah.
above a restaurant that used to take our UPS packages. They were very nice. We were on very good terms with them.
What kind of food was it?
It was called the Wicked Wolf. It was a bar. You know, it was like Second and
pub.
Third Avenue, yes, or filled with those kind of in those years those kinds of bars that attracted a college crowd. They didn't card people too carefully,
Right.
so you could have a fake ID and drink all you wanted. And there's actually one of them, Dorian's Red Hand. It was just down the street that was implicated in this terrible murder in Central Park. The preppy,
Oh.
that preppy,
Oh,
the
wow.
preppy Robert Chambers.
Yeah, I remember
That's
that.
where that's where those two had
They used
met.
to hang out
Oh,
there.
wow.
The two had met there, and then they went off to the park together, and she
Mhm.
ended up dead. That poor girl.
Yeah, that was a horrible story.
That was,
Don't write that one.
I don't want to write that one.
That's not a good one. So what kind of book are you working on now?
It's actually another historical. I've sort of developed a taste for this,
That's great.
and this one is set in 1916 and 1917 in New Orleans, which it's more of a challenge because of the year and more of a challenge because of the place. I've been to New Orleans twice, once a long time ago and fell in love with it, and then once recently to do research. But, you know, how long was I there for? Not that long. So that part is a challenge. And then just researching things in 1916 and 17, there's simply less of a visual record available. You don't have movies from that time period that were made then, right, that you can see. Maybe very few. There might be a few movies, but not like the 1940s, right, that, you know, there's just this outpouring of films and
Right.
great films. But it takes place in the district, Storyville. It's about a madam, a Jewish madam.
Wow.
I had read something about that there were Jewish prostitutes in New Orleans, and I thought, what do you mean there were Jewish prostitutes? Like, I don't know that immigrant story. Like, my family was all immigrants, and I know their story, and I know lots of other immigrant stories. Jews that went through Cuba or South America before they
Right.
got to the United States. You know, all kinds of different stories. But I did not know the story of Jewish women becoming prostitutes in New Orleans. And because I am a novelist and not a historian, I don't have to, hew that closely to the facts. I get to make things up. So I invented a background for this woman, like how she got to be that person.
Very nice and interesting. So your other books were not historical fiction.
No, I've written. This is a pseudonym, so I've written books
Right.
under another name.
I have the name. Can I say it?
Sure,
Yona Zeldis McDonough.
that's it.
Okay. And it says you've written 7 adult novels and
Yes.
28 books for children.
Yes, I have done that, and the most recent of those novels, The House on Primrose Pond, had a historical component that took place in 18th century New England, and involved the very unlucky, tragic figure of Ruth Blay, who had the dubious, I can't say honor, but distinction of being the last woman hanged in the state of New Hampshire in 1768. And she was accused of murdering her newborn child, her newborn baby. She was not convicted of that, but what she was convicted of and executed for was concealing the birth of an illegitimate child, which was a capital offense
Wow.
in these colonies. This was not even the United States yet. And this was an English rule, and we were an English law, and we were under English rule. And the governor, who gave her at least two reprieves, which suggests that he really did not want to do this. He did not want to execute this 32-year-old woman who maintained that she did not kill her baby and really did not sound like she killed her baby. But he was under the British law, and he had to uphold it, and so he did. So sections of that novel were written from somebody's point of view back then, and I found that I liked that the best of all. I loved writing that part. So I thought, like, the next one I'm going to just do like all in the past.
Oh, okay. Now, I love the cover. I'm sorry our listeners can't see the cover, but it's a very fashionable-looking woman wearing a pink dress with her hair up, not the way any of us would ever wear it now, looking over the New York skyline. How did you get such a great cover?
I don't have much to do with the cover. I
Okay.
love the cover too, but I was shown several designs, early designs, and while I loved the concept, the earlier designs looked like the woman was playing dress up, like she was going to a Halloween costume and she was trying to look like she was from the 1940s. And I said, maybe I could send you some images, that I can cull of actual clothes and hairstyles and hats from that period. And I did that, and they used them.
Oh, wow.
So I was very appreciative that they,
Yeah, because I hear they don't usually give you a lot of
they
input in the cover.
They really don't give you any. I think it was just very nice
Yeah.
that they
Harper,
did.
It was HarperCollins.
Yes, they've been great to work
Yeah.
with.
HarperCollins is a good publishing house there. And our books, the copies we had, were all out. I had to go to another library
Well,
to get my copy.
I love to hear that.
Yeah.
I don't want
I
them to sit
wasn't-
on the shelf.
No,
I want them,
I
go out.
And
meet
originally
people.
when I looked, they
Get
had 2
read.
copies on the shelf, and when I went, there was only 1. So that
Okay.
means the
Well,
other
that's
one went
fine.
out too. So I was like, wow, I'm so glad I got the 1 copy I need. And I enjoyed it. It was a really, really
Thank
nice
you.
story. I also saw that you'll be at Book Expo 2020 this year. Is that correct?
I didn't know that.
Oh, I saw it. Really? Okay. It
Okay.
came up when I was when I
Okay.
was researching you. It
Well,
came up Book Expo 2020 and your
when
name was
when
there.
is it?
In May.
In May.
End of
Yeah.
May, right?
My novel will not be written
Oh,
by
it won't
then.
be done by then?
No.
Okay, so maybe it's not correct. I don't know.
I'm happy to go if I'm invited. I went last time. It was fabulous.
Right. Well, maybe that's what it was. Maybe it
Um,
was
It was
from
an older one?
2019, but it definitely said
No,
2020.
I was there in not even, I think it must have been 2018.
Okay.
Because
We were there.
this came out in hardcover in the fall of
Right.
2018.
So you probably were there in 2018.
Right. So that would have been in the spring of 2018. That makes sense.
What did you
and
do?
I did.
Did you just do a signing or?
Yes, I did a signing, but people were like lined up. I mean, they had obviously been getting some buzz about it or hearing
Yeah.
something because they wanted copies.
HarperCollins does a lot of good
They
publicity.
are
Very good
great.
marketing.
Can I
Yeah.
say that, HarperCollins? You are the dream team. I love each and every one
Yeah,
of you.
we like
They're
HarperCollins.
Yeah, we
here
do
too.
terrific. Well, that's good to know because
Yes.
I've worked with other publishers that, let's say, they shall remain nameless, but I had one instance where I was talking to my lovely editor, but she said, look, I know you're frustrated, but you don't want to make the people in PR and marketing feel like they're not doing a good job. And I said, what if they aren't doing a good job? Do we not get to say that?
Right.
Because they aren't. I never got an answer to that question.
Okay, but HarperCollins did a good marketing
A
job.
fabulous
for you.
job. And very responsive to anything I ask for, can you send a book here or can you contact this person? And they're just like, it's done. It's before it seems like before I even can blink, it's done.
That's great. I'm glad you found a good place to be.
Yes. Does
Okay.
it feel weird to be called Kitty though after?
No, because Kitty is my college nickname. And I will tell you how that came about now that you know my other name. I had a very good friend who was actually, he was a professor of mine at Vassar. It was his first year teaching and my last year in school. So
you guys are probably pretty close in age then. It wasn't a big age discrepancy.
he was 29.
Yeah.
So he was kind of like an older brother, can't even say uncle, but like a beloved older brother kind of steering me in the world. And he's still a friend of mine after 40 years. So I said to him, I don't think Yona Zeldis belongs at Vassar. I think my name should have been Catherine Ann Worthington. And he said, Kitty. He just started calling me that.
Oh,
and
that's
he's
cute.
been calling me that for all those years.
Oh.
And I know any number of people through him, and they all call me Kitty. So it is actually a nickname I've had for decades.
So that's great.
Yeah.
So it doesn't feel strange.
So Zeldis was your maiden name.
Indeed.
Okay.
So it doesn't really feel strange
It's
at
not
all.
then it's not really a fake name.
No.
It's your real name. You just used a different name for your other book.
Right, a different part of it.
Right. Okay. And McDonough, your husband?
Yes.
Not Jewish.
The Irishman I married. Yes.
So you really can relate to the story with
Absolutely.
somebody falling in love with somebody not Jewish.
Yes. I mean, that wasn't such an issue in in my time.
Right.
You know,
But even
sure.
in this time, it's
Yes,
still
I
an
think-
issue.
I think my mother was, regretful in some way. She loves him and they get along really well. And my grandmother came to accept him very quickly and easily. She'd say, "A prince, she married a prince." He was very good to her. She was a difficult woman, and he was very patient with her and very sweet with her.
That's nice.
It was very nice. And I'm sure that his family probably thought, I don't know, like, who is she? This like weird New York, fast talking, hand using. I mean, I don't think that if there were Jews in Portsmouth, New Hampshire, where he grew up, he didn't know them.
Right.
There were not many.
Right. We met down here in New York City.
Yes. Yeah, he'd been in New York for a lot of years.
Right.
But
Right. That's very nice. Good. I'm glad to hear that. Now you guys live in Brooklyn.
we do. But it's not the Brooklyn of my childhood. It's a very different Brooklyn.
Are you in the same area? Or?
No, although I knew Park Slope then, and it always had a bit of a cachet. But the Brooklyn of my girlhood, I have described as a perpetual Sunday afternoon in August. It was a sleepy backwater. Now Brooklyn is very hip. I don't know if you know this.
Yes.
I was born in Brooklyn too,
So,
but I know nothing about it.
Well, there are busloads of tourists from Berlin and Paris that come to
Oh my
Brooklyn.
God.
Like, oh my God, exactly. Any of us who
Wow.
grew up back then, we cannot wrap our minds around this, how this has happened.
Mm.
And neighborhoods have changed and gentrified, and my children live in neighborhoods whose names you didn't utter, much less
Right.
go to
Right,
in those
right.
years. But there they are.
I was born in Crown Heights.
That's one of those neighborhoods that you don't, right? And now that is
Right.
that is gentrifying,
Mm-hmm.
as we speak.
Right.
You can get a lavender latte there.
Yes.
Because I have.
Oh my
So-
God. I have to tell my mother that.
Tell her, she'll find it funny. How
Absolutely.
things change.
Well, Kitty, it's been a pleasure having you here, and we'd like to invite you back when your new book comes out.
Thank you.
And
I
we
will
can
come.
do another Turn the Page recording. So this is Evelyn.
And Lisa.
At Kitty. Nice to talk to you.
Thank you
both.
so much for coming. And this
Okay.
is another chapter of Turn the Page. Thank you.
It's time to close this chapter of Turn the Page. Join us for the next episode.